What lies beneath the frozen heart of Antarctica? For decades, the world has stared at the endless white expanse, convinced that beneath the ice there was only ancient snow and rock. Then, in 1996, Russian scientists drilling through more than 2 miles of ice discovered something that turned that certainty into a question. A massive subglacial lake, hidden for perhaps 15 million years, sealed away from sunlight, air, and any living creature we know. Lake Vostok stretches nearly 250 kilometers long, 50 kilometers wide, and as deep as a small ocean. Its surface lies under a lid of ice that has never melted, creating a pressure-sealed environment isolated from the rest of the planet. The water is super cold, hovering just above its freezing point, yet somehow remains liquid, kept from solidifying by the immense pressure of the overlying ice sheet. Scientists wonder, could life have taken root in this darkness? Some microbes discovered in the ice cores surrounding the lake show genetic markers unlike any we have cataloged, hinting at a hidden biosphere that evolved in complete isolation. Others argue that the water is sterile, a frozen time capsule preserving ancient atmospheric gases that could rewrite our understanding of Earth's climate history. The lake also holds a darker allure. When the Russian team finally pierced the barrier in 2012, they released a plume of ancient water, raising concerns that we might have disturbed a pristine ecosystem, perhaps even a reservoir of pathogens that have never encountered the surface world. What if the lake harbors organisms that could outlive any known antibiotic or toxins that could reshape life on Earth? Even more unsettling are the geological clues. Sediments at the lake's bottom contain minerals that suggest periodic volcanic activity far beneath the ice, implying that the continent may be more geologically active than we thought. And the magnetic anomalies detected over the lake hint at a massive, hidden structure. Some speculate a massive cavern, others a natural reservoir of liquid iron. Every drill, every sample pulls us deeper into the unknown, yet the answers remain tantalizingly out of reach. As the ice continues to creep and shift, one thing is clear. Lake Vostok is a silent guardian of secrets older than humanity itself, a frozen abyss that asks us to look beyond the surface and confront the possibility that life, in forms we cannot yet imagine, may be thriving in perpetual night. The question remains, what will we find when we finally break through the last layer of ice, and will we be ready for what lies beneath? The night sky has always been a mirror for humanity's deepest questions, but what if the mirror was not only a reflection, but a blueprint? For centuries, the desert plains of southern Peru have concealed a silent enigma. The Nazca lines, vast geoglyphs etched into the earth so precisely that they can only be fully grasped from the air. At first glance, they appear as the work of a curious, perhaps even whimsical, culture: giant hummingbirds, massive spiders, and abstract spirals stretching for miles. Yet, when the same desert is examined under a different light, under the celestial map of the ancient world, a chilling alignment emerges. Researchers have plotted the positions of the lines against the night sky as it would have looked over 1,000 years ago when the Nazca people flourished. Astonishingly, several of the most prominent figures correspond to constellations that were central to Andean cosmology. The massive figure of the astronaut, a humanoid shape with outstretched arms, aligns almost perfectly with the bright star Antares, the heart of the Scorpius constellation, a star that has long been associated with death and rebirth in pre-Columbian myth. The hummingbird, whose wings span more than 300 meters, points directly toward the rising point of the bright star Canopus, the second brightest star in the night sky, which ancient Andeans regarded as a gateway to the afterlife. Even more unsettling is the geometric precision of the lines that intersect at points matching the positions of the Pleiades, a cluster that governed agricultural calendars and ritual cycles. When the sun set on the winter solstice, a thin strip of the desert would catch the first rays of light, casting a shadow that traced the outline of the Tree of Life, geoglyph, illuminating the same spot where the Pleiades would have been positioned above the horizon. Some scholars argue that this was a deliberate attempt to bind Earth and sky, creating a terrestrial star map that could be read only from the heavens, perhaps by priests perched atop distant cliffs or by a people who imagined themselves as walking between worlds. One theory, championed by a handful of archaeoastronomers, suggests that the Nazca lines were not merely ceremonial pathways, but a massive, ground-based observatory, a cosmic calendar that allowed the community to predict celestial events with startling accuracy. Yet the same researchers caution that the evidence remains circumstantial. The alignments could be coincidental, a product of the vast number of lines and the endless configurations of the night sky. Still, the sheer scale of the correspondence, multiple figures, multiple stars, multiple seasonal events, pushes the probability beyond mere chance. What does this mean for our understanding of the Nazca people? Were they capable of mapping the heavens with a sophistication that rivals the great observatories of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia? Or did they possess a mythic worldview where the ground itself was a canvas for the gods, each line a prayer etched into stone, each alignment a silent pact with the stars? The desert keeps its secrets close, the wind erasing footprints but never the shadows of these ancient calculations. As the sun sets behind the Andes and the desert cools, one can't help but wonder. Did the Nazca truly look up and see their own lives drawn across the sky, or were they merely drawing the sky upon the earth, hoping the heavens would one day read back? The answer remains buried beneath a thin layer of sand, waiting for the next curious mind to lift the veil. The darkness of the mine seemed to swallow even the faintest glimmer of the lamp above, yet something extraordinary lay hidden in the blackened walls, waiting for centuries to be uncovered. It was the summer of 2015, deep in the coal seams of the Harlan County shaft in western Kentucky, when a crew of miners, accustomed to the oppressive heat and the constant rumble of their machines, struck an object that would shatter the line between prehistory and the industrial age. A sudden, sharp clang echoed through the cavern as the drill bit hit something harder than stone. The men froze, their breaths forming ghostly clouds in the stale air. When the dust settled, they saw the faint outline of a blade, its edge still gleaming despite the surrounding grime. It was a bronze sword, its hilt wrapped in a faded leather grip, the pommel adorned with a small, weather-worn animal head, perhaps a goat or a bull. Its length measured about 60 centimeters, the typical size of a late Bronze Age weapon found in the Near East, not in the Appalachian coalfields. Archaeologists who later examined the find were baffled. Radiocarbon dating of the surrounding mineral deposits placed the surrounding coal at roughly 150 million years old, while the alloy composition of the sword, a precise mixture of copper, tin, and trace arsenic, matched weapons dated to the 13th century BCE in Anatolia and the Balkans. How could a relic from a civilization that never set foot on the American continent end up in a shaft that had been mined for only a few decades? Several theories emerged, each more unsettling than the last. One suggestion pointed to a rare geological phenomenon. The sword could have been encased in a pocket of ancient sediment that was thrust upward by the immense pressure of tectonic movement, only to be exposed when modern mining cut through the layer. Yet the surrounding rock showed no signs of the kind of folding or uplift typically required to transport such a heavy artifact across continents. Another hypothesis considered the possibility of a hidden, prehistoric burial site, perhaps a forgotten cache left by a wandering group of Bronze Age migrants. Some researchers have noted that the ancient world was not as isolated as once believed. Trade routes stretched further than the conventional maps suggest. Still, no other artifacts, pottery shards, tools, or human remains were discovered nearby, leaving the sword as a lone, inexplicable sentinel. A more chilling speculation whispered through the mining community. The sword might be a relic of a lost, indigenous culture that mastered bronze long before the arrival of Europeans. Indigenous groups in the region have left behind stone tools and pottery, but no evidence of metalworking has ever been confirmed. If true, this find would rewrite the entire technological timeline of North America. The official report concluded that the sword's origin remains a mystery, classifying it as an anomalous artifact. It now sits in a climate-controlled vault, its bronze surface still bearing the faint marks of ancient rivets and a faint, almost imperceptible inscription that no scholar has yet deciphered. Every night, as the vault door closes, one cannot help but wonder what silent story lies within that cold metal, who forged it, why it was placed there, and how it survived the eons only to be revealed by the clamor of a modern coal mine. The answer, for now, stays buried in the dark, just as the mine itself still holds secrets that the light has yet to illuminate. Deep in the shadow of Mount Fuji lies a place where silence seems to swallow even the wind Aokigahara, the infamous Sea of Trees. For centuries, travelers have whispered that this forest is more than a tangle of firs and cedars. They claim its very trunks hold the echoes of the souls that have walked among them. What could possibly cause a tree to become a silent recorder of human thought? The first clue comes from the forest's strange acoustic properties. Scientists who have measured sound inside Aokigahara report an eerie dampening. Voices are swallowed, footsteps vanish, and even the rustle of leaves is muffled to a faint hush. The dense canopy, combined with a thick layer of volcanic ash beneath the soil, creates a natural sound-absorbing chamber. Some researchers suggest that this acoustic insulation could allow vibrations from spoken words to linger longer than they would anywhere else, embedding faint reverberations into the wood's cellular structure. But the mystery deepens when we look at the trees themselves. Decades of botanical studies have uncovered an unusually high concentration of lignin crystals in Aokigahara's firs, a mineral that, under certain pressures, can retain microscopic stress patterns. One hypothesis, proposed by a small group of ethnobotanists, is that intense emotional trauma, the despair of countless people who have chosen this place for their final act, could generate unique biochemical signals. These signals might alter the crystal lattice in a way that records the chemical imprint of stress hormones, essentially writing a moment of terror or sorrow into the tree's growth rings. Local folklore adds another layer. The ancient Jaman people who once roamed these hills believed that the forest was a portal to the spirit world, a place where the trees could listen. They carved prayer sticks, or ***, into the bark, leaving written wishes that, according to oral tradition, never faded. Modern hikers still report finding old wooden tablets, half buried, still bearing faint scratches of ink that have survived centuries, as if the wood itself resisted decay to preserve those words. No definitive scientific proof has yet linked tree physiology to the preservation of thoughts, yet the convergence of acoustic deadening, unusual lignin composition, and centuries-old cultural practices fuels a compelling, unsettling picture. When you step into Aokigahara, the air feels heavier, as if the forest is holding its breath, waiting for the next secret to be whispered into its roots. And perhaps, somewhere beneath the moss-covered floor, the trees are indeed keeping a silent ledger of every hope, regret, and last breath that has ever passed through their ancient canopy, a living archive that we may never be able to read, but can only feel in the unsettling stillness that greets every visitor. Deep beneath the endless amber dunes of the Kalahian Desert, where the sun scorches the horizon and the wind carries whispers of forgotten ages, there lie stones that seem to mourn the world around them. Travelers who have dared to cross this desolate expanse speak of boulders that weep, tiny rivulets of brine that seep from fissures in the rock, forming delicate, shimmering streams that disappear into the sand as quickly as they appear. The locals call them the crying stones, a name that has survived oral tradition for generations, but the true origin of their tears remains shrouded in mystery. When geologists first examined the phenomenon, they found that the liquid is not ordinary groundwater. Chemical analyses revealed an unusually high concentration of calcium carbonate, magnesium, and trace amounts of rare earth elements that cannot be explained by the known aquifers beneath the desert. Moreover, the seepage follows a precise, rhythmic pattern, 3 pulses every 24 hours, as if the stones are breathing. Some researchers suggest that ancient underground chambers, long collapsed, could be channeling ancient rainwater trapped since the last great pluvial period, but no such cavities have ever been mapped. The most unsettling clue comes from the strange markings etched into the surface of several of these boulders. The patterns are not random. They resemble a form of proto-writing, composed of interlocking spirals, chevrons, and elongated dots. When photographed under infrared light, the symbols glow faintly, hinting at a pigment that has survived millennia. One theory, proposed by archaeologist Dr. Lindu M. Kais, posits that a lost civilization, perhaps a pre-Bantu culture that once flourished along an ancient lake, now buried beneath the dunes, used these stones as both reservoirs and ritual objects. The tears would then be a deliberate release, a ceremonial offering to the spirits of the desert, timed to the movement of the stars. Yet no definitive artifacts have been uncovered in the vicinity to confirm such a society. Excavations near the stones have yielded only fragmented pottery shards of unknown origin, their glaze matching no known pottery tradition of the region. Some anthropologists argue that the markings could be a natural weathering process, a product of mineral crystallization mimicking human design. Others point to the alignment of several stone clusters with the solstices, a precision that would be improbable without intentional placement. What remains undeniable is the emotional impact these weeping rocks have on those who stand before them. The thin, salty streams reflect the pale sky, and the desert wind carries their sound, a soft, perpetual sigh that seems to echo across time. In the stillness of night, when the dunes are lit only by a waning moon, the stones appear to pulse with a faint, almost imperceptible luminescence, as if the very earth is exhaling a secret it has guarded for ages. So the question lingers, hanging in the hot air like a mirage. Are the crying stones a natural geological quirk, or are they the last, mournful testimony of a civilization swallowed by the sands, its language etched in stone, its tears still flowing into oblivion? The desert keeps its answer close, and every drop that falls is a reminder that some mysteries refuse to be silenced. The night sky over the Danakil Depression has never been a place for ordinary wonders. Yet, on a scorching June evening in 1974, the moon rose, not silver, but a deep, unearthly crimson that seemed to bleed across the horizon. Witnesses from the scattered nomadic settlements described the orb as a perfect sphere of rust-colored light, its surface rippling with a faint, pulsating glow, as if some unseen heart were beating within it. The blood-red moon lingered for nearly 3 hours, casting a sinister hue over the salt flats, the sulfuric vents, and the jagged basalt towers that dominate this otherworldly landscape. Scientists who later examined the event were left with more questions than answers. The Danakil region is notorious for its extreme geological activity: massive hydrothermal fields, acid pools that hiss and steam, and a crust so thin that the Earth's mantle occasionally whispers through. Some researchers hypothesize that an unusual concentration of airborne mineral particles, particularly iron oxides and sulfur compounds, could have scattered sunlight in such a way that the moon appeared tinted. Yet, atmospheric measurements taken the following days revealed no significant increase in particulate density, and the sky returned to its normal pale glow. Another theory points to a rare volcanic ash plume from the nearby Erta Ale volcano, which erupted silently that same week. The ash, rich in basaltic glass, might have reflected longer wavelengths, painting the moon in a crimson veil. However, satellite data from that era show no substantial plume reaching the altitude required to affect lunar illumination. Local folklore adds another layer of mystery. The Afar people speak of the Moon of the Red River, a celestial omen said to foretell the birth of a great drought or the arrival of a wandering tribe of unknown origin. Elders recount that, during that night, the desert winds carried a faint metallic scent, and the normally silent geysers erupted with a low, mournful howl, as if the earth itself were lamenting. Even modern astrophysicists admit that the phenomenon defies simple explanation. Some suggest a combination of transient atmospheric conditions, perhaps a fleeting surge of volcanic gases mingling with dust lifted by a rare, high-speed sandstorm, could have created the perfect optical filter. Others caution that, without precise spectroscopic data from the moment, the true cause may remain forever hidden, locked within the amber-colored memory of those who witnessed it. What lingers now, long after the red glow faded, is the unsettling feeling that the Danakil Depression still holds its secrets close, ready to paint the heavens with colors that should never belong to night. The blood-red moon remains a silent question hanging over the ash-scarred plains. Was it a natural spectacle, a planetary whisper, or something that hints at forces we have yet to comprehend? The answer, like the desert's own heat, refuses to cool. Deep in the tangled heart of the Guatemalan rainforest, where the canopy swallows sunlight like a living veil, lies Tikal, once a bustling metropolis of the Maya, now a stone-crowned ruin whispered about by the wind. Most visitors marvel at the towering temples that pierce the mist, but beneath the shadow of Temple Roman II, archaeologists uncovered something that has not yet been read, not even by the most seasoned epigraphers. A hidden chamber, sealed for centuries, its walls plastered with an unrecognizable script that defies every known Maya glyphic system. The discovery came by accident. A team from the University of Pennsylvania was mapping subterranean voids with ground-penetrating radar when a faint anomaly appeared, a perfect rectangle buried 12 meters below the temple's base. When they broke through the limestone, a narrow passage opened, leading to a room that seemed frozen in time. The air was cold, heavy with the scent of damp earth, and something else, an indefinable metallic tang that clung to the skin. Inside, the walls were covered from floor to ceiling with rows of incised symbols, each stroke sharp, each curve precise, yet none matched the familiar syllabary of classic Maya. Even the most advanced decipherment software flagged the characters as unknown. Some scholars suggest the script could belong to a pre-classic or even an entirely separate civilization that once shared the lowlands with the Maya. A hidden culture erased from history by disease, war, or the very jungle that now protects its secrets. Others propose a ritual language, reserved for elite priests to record forbidden knowledge, perhaps a cosmological map, a prophecy, or a catalog of sacrifices so dreadful that the Maya chose to conceal it forever. The chamber also contained a series of stone basins filled with a dark, viscous residue, still wet after millennia, hinting at a ceremonial purpose that went beyond mere record-keeping. What makes this find truly chilling is not just the script itself, but the silence surrounding it. No contemporaneous Maya stele reference such a language. No colonial chronicler ever mentions a hidden library beneath Tikal's temples. The very existence of an unreadable script forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that our picture of Maya civilization is still incomplete, that entire chapters of their intellectual life may remain locked behind a wall of symbols we cannot yet decode. As night falls over the ruins, the stone doors of the hidden chamber close once more, and the jungle seems to pulse with a low, resonant hum, perhaps the echo of a forgotten tongue still waiting to be heard. Will future generations find a key to unlock those enigmatic marks, or will they remain an eternal enigma, a silent testament to a knowledge lost in the green abyss? The answer, like the chamber itself, remains shrouded in darkness. What if the mountains themselves could set the night ablaze, spilling molten light across a valley without a spark of flame? Every February, a veil of fire slides down the granite face of Yosemite's Horsetail Fall, turning the river of stone into a fleeting waterfall of liquid gold. Scientists call it a firefall, but none can explain why the desert sky seems to ignite the cliff in a display that feels more myth than meteorology. The spectacle begins when a rare alignment of celestial and terrestrial forces converges. The setting sun, low on the western horizon, must be perfectly positioned to cast its rays directly onto the sheer western face of the fall. At the same time, a thin veil of high-altitude cloud must drift across the sky, acting like a giant diffuser, softening the sun's brilliance and turning it into a warm, amber glow. As the light spills over the waterfall's edge, the thin sheet of water, just a whisper of runoff from the melting snow, catches each photon, reflecting it back in a cascade that looks like molten lava. Local Native American legends speak of the blood of the earth, a warning that the mountain itself could bleed fire. Modern observers, armed with spectrometers and high-resolution cameras, have measured the phenomenon's intensity, noting that the reflected light can reach temperatures of over 500 degrees C at the point of contact, yet no flame ever ignites. The water remains untouched, the rock unscathed, as if the universe momentarily paused to perform an impossible ballet of light and stone. Why does this brief ballet occur only a handful of years in a decade? The answer lies in the fickle dance of climate. A dry winter, a heavy snowfall the previous season, and a clear February sky must all cooperate. When any element falters, cloud cover thickens, the sun sets too early, or the waterfall runs dry, the firefall disappears, leaving only the memory of a night when Yosemite seemed to burn from within. To stand at the edge of the valley, watching the glow wash over the granite, is to feel the thin line between natural law and something far more enigmatic. And as the last ember of light fades into the dark, one question lingers. What other secrets are hidden in the silent, stone-capped cliffs, waiting for the right alignment to reveal themselves? The sun has already begun its slow descent behind the distant hills, and a thin veil of twilight settles over the ruined city of Great Zimbabwe. Shadows crawl along the massive stone walls, their surfaces rough and weathered by centuries of wind, rain, and human hands. Yet, as the last light fades, an uncanny sound rises from the very heart of the complex, a low-frequency hum that seems to vibrate the air itself, a deep murmur that can be felt more than heard. What could cause ancient granite monoliths, built over 800 years ago, to sing at dusk? Archaeologists have long marveled at the sheer scale of the Great Zimbabwe walls, over 5 miles of towering stone, some blocks weighing several tons, fitted together without mortar. Their purpose remains debated: royal palace, ceremonial center, or a symbol of power. But the hum adds another layer of mystery that defies simple explanation. Field recordings captured by researchers in the 1990s show a consistent tone around 30 Hz, barely audible to the human ear, but enough to cause a faint shiver in those who stand close. The phenomenon appears only after sunset and ceases as soon as night fully envelops the site. One hypothesis points to the geology of the surrounding landscape. The hills around Great Zimbabwe sit on a complex network of basaltic dikes and quartz veins. When temperature drops rapidly at dusk, the stone contracts, potentially creating microfractures that release energy in the form of acoustic waves. Some geophysicists argue that the resonance is amplified by the unique geometry of the walls, acting like a massive, ancient gong. Yet laboratory simulations of similar stone structures have produced only faint clicks, not the sustained hum reported by witnesses. Another line of inquiry explores the role of wind. The plateau where the city stands experiences a nightly breeze that funnels through narrow gaps between the walls. As the wind passes, it can set up standing waves within the stone corridors, much like a pipe organ. Researchers have measured wind speeds of up to 15 kilometers per hour at the time the hum is strongest, suggesting a possible aerodynamic origin. However, the frequency remains remarkably constant, regardless of wind variation, which challenges a purely mechanical explanation. Local oral traditions add an unsettling dimension. The Shona elders speak of the voice of the ancestors that awakens when the sun kisses the earth goodbye. They tell stories of a sacred stone, hidden within the inner enclosure, that vibrates in response to the spirit's call. While such accounts cannot be dismissed outright, they also blur the line between cultural memory and physical reality, leaving scientists to wonder whether the hum might be a psychosomatic response to the site's profound aura. A more speculative theory suggests that the walls themselves could be a forgotten acoustic engineering feat. Some researchers note that the massive stone slabs are arranged in a pattern reminiscent of ancient acoustic chambers found in other parts of the world, such as the Temple of Hathor in Egypt. If the builders intentionally aligned certain blocks to capture and amplify low-frequency vibrations, perhaps for ritual purposes, then the hum could be the echo of an ancient practice, reactivated by the nightly cooling of stone. The mystery remains unresolved, and each new expedition brings fresh data, but also fresh questions. Why does the hum appear precisely at dusk, and why does it fade with the darkness? Is it a natural geological resonance, a wind-driven acoustic phenomenon, or a deliberately crafted feature of a civilization that understood the power of sound? As the night deepens over the silent ruins, the low-frequency hum lingers in the mind of every visitor, a reminder that some echoes of the past are still waiting to be fully heard. Deep within the mist-shrouded hills of Meghalaya, where clouds cling to jagged limestone cliffs like a veil over an ancient secret, lies a network of caves that have whispered their riddles for centuries. Locals call them the Singing Caves, a name born not from folklore alone, but from the eerie, resonant tones that ripple through the darkness. Each time a drop of water strikes the stone or a lone explorer steps on the slick floor. At first glance, the caves appear like any other karst formation. Towering columns of calcite, stalactites dripping with mineral-laden tears, and subterranean rivers carving silent passages. Yet when the wind pushes through the narrow mouths, a low, mournful hum rises, as if the stone itself is breathing. Scientists who have ventured inside report that the sound does not behave like ordinary echo. It bends, stretches, and sometimes fades into a harmonic that seems to follow a pattern, almost musical, yet no source can be pinpointed. Some researchers suggest that the cave's unique geometry creates standing waves, amplifying frequencies that would normally dissipate. Others point to the presence of rare mineral deposits, magnetite and gypsum, whose crystalline lattices might vibrate in response to minute seismic tremors, producing the lingering resonance. Yet even the most sophisticated acoustic models fail to reproduce the exact timbre recorded by field teams. The phenomenon intensifies during the monsoon, when water levels surge and the underground river becomes a roaring torrent. But the song does not simply grow louder. It changes key, shifting from a deep bass to a trembling soprano that seems to echo the very heartbeat of the mountain. The indigenous Khasi people have long believed the caves are the domain of spirits, guardians of forgotten knowledge. Their oral histories speak of a time when the song guided lost travelers back to the surface, only to cease when the balance was disturbed. In recent decades, a handful of trekkers have claimed to hear whispered words within the reverberations, fragments of an ancient language, perhaps a warning, perhaps a memory of a civilization that once thrived in these hills before the earth swallowed it whole. Even modern equipment has struggled to capture the full spectrum of the sound. A team from the Indian Institute of Technology placed high-sensitivity microphones deep within the Sidju cave, yet the recordings returned as a dense, indecipherable wash of frequencies, like a choir of unseen voices humming in unison. When the data were analyzed, a faint pattern emerged, a series of intervals that loosely correspond to the pentatonic scale, a scale found in many folk traditions across the subcontinent. Was this coincidence, or a lingering echo of a lost cultural rhythm encoded in stone? The mystery deepens when we consider the cave's proximity to the ancient burial sites of the Khasi and Jaintia peoples, whose stone sarcophagi bear enigmatic petroglyphs depicting spirals and waveforms. Some archaeologists speculate that the caves were once used for ritual chanting, the song a living instrument that amplified human voices to the heavens. If that is true, the stones may have retained a memory of those vibrations, a geological palimpsest that sings long after the singers have faded. So the question remains, are the singing caves a natural acoustic marvel, a geological anomaly, or a lingering chorus of a civilization lost to time? As the mist rolls back each dawn, the hills keep their secret, and the caves continue to hum, an unsettling reminder that some sounds are meant to be heard, yet never fully understood. The echoes linger in the darkness, waiting for the next curious soul brave enough to listen. The metal was cold, almost reluctant, when the archaeologists lifted it from the mud-caked floor of a forgotten sanctuary near the coast of Anatolia. At first glance, it was an ordinary bronze mirror, its back polished to a dull sheen, its rim etched with the faint, looping script of a long-dead alphabet. Yet when the first sunlight struck its surface, the glass-like pool of metal did something no other artifact from that era has ever done. It reflected faces that did not belong to anyone who had ever stood before it. The mirror measures just under a foot in diameter, its edge rimmed with a pattern of interlocking spirals that scholars have linked to the cult of Cybele, the mother goddess. The bronze itself dates, through thermoluminescent analysis, to roughly 50 BCE, placing it squarely in the Hellenistic period. Its discovery site, a shallow pit beneath a collapsed altar, suggests it was deliberately hidden, perhaps as a talisman or an offering. When the lead conservator angled the mirror toward the open sky, a soft, silvered sheen rippled across its surface, and within that shimmer emerged the outline of a gaunt, bearded man with eyes like hollow pits. The image flickered, then dissolved into another visage, a woman with a crown of twisted metal, her mouth opened in a silent scream. None of the researchers present recognized the features. The faces bore no resemblance to known portraiture from the region, nor to any mythic figures documented in surviving texts. Some historians argue that the mirror was a ritual device used by a sect that believed in the world within the world, a belief that every reflective surface could act as a portal to a hidden realm. One theory suggests that the bronze alloy, mixed with a trace of meteoritic iron, might have been deliberately crafted to capture and amplify ambient electromagnetic fields, creating a fleeting visual echo of souls trapped between dimensions. Others caution against such speculation, noting that the phenomenon could be a trick of light, the result of microfractures within the metal acting like a kaleidoscopic lens. What deepens the mystery is the inscription etched along the rim. It reads, in a language only partially deciphered, Delta Epsilon letter 1 FD6 Xi Omicron, Nu Tau letter 1 F78, Nu letter 1 F00 Nu Theta Rho Omega Pi Omicron Upsilon, Tau letter 1 F78, Nu letter 1 F00 Omicron Rho Alpha Tau Omicron U. Roughly translating to show the unseen man. The phrase seems to be a command, an invocation, as if the mirror itself were a conduit for something beyond human perception. The team has recorded the images with high-definition cameras, but each playback reveals only a faint silhouette, never the full detail of the faces. The faces appear for a breath, then melt back into the bronze, leaving behind an uncanny chill that settles over the lab. Even after the mirror is covered, some of the researchers report lingering dreams of those same hollow-eyed strangers, as if the artifact has left an imprint on their minds. To this day, the bronze mirror rests in a climate-controlled vault, its surface guarded by glass and caution. Scholars continue to debate whether it is a relic of forgotten religious practice, an early experiment in optical illusion, or something far more unsettling, a relic that briefly bridges our world with a realm populated by unknown faces that stare back, demanding to be seen. The answer remains hidden, reflected only in the fleeting glint of ancient bronze. What if a 1,000-year-old carving, hidden high in the Altai peaks, was more than just a symbol of a forgotten tribe? What if it were a warning, etched in stone, that still hums with an unseen menace? The story begins in the summer of 1999, when a team of Russian archaeologists, led by Dr. Irina Petrov, stumbled upon a series of deep-cut petroglyphs on a wind-scarred cliff overlooking the Khashoggi Valley. At first glance, the images seemed typical of Siberian Bronze Age art, stylized hunters, elk, and spiraling sun motifs. Yet, among the familiar scenes, a peculiar figure dominated the composition, a perfect circle of 12 radiating spokes, its center filled with a stark, blackened disk. Locals call this the Black Sun, a symbol whispered about in the shamanic legends of the Altai peoples. The carvings were dated to roughly 500 years ago, using a combination of patina analysis and the stratigraphy of nearby habitation layers. What makes the Black Sun different from any other solar icon is not only its eerie darkness, but also the way the surrounding rock appears to have been deliberately charred. Microscopic examination revealed traces of a mineral known as magnetite, which, when heated, turns an unnaturally deep black. Some researchers suggest that ancient metalworkers deliberately infused the stone with this substance, creating a pigment that would not fade even after millennia of wind and rain. But the mystery deepens when we look at the pattern surrounding the central disk. Encircling the Black Sun are a series of interlocking triangles, each pointing inward, forming a vortex-like design that resembles a modern occult sigil. Ethnographers have recorded similar motifs in oral traditions, a night sun that rises when the world is on the brink of catastrophe. According to one shamanic tale, the Black Sun appears in the sky when the great ice returns, sealing the valleys in perpetual frost. The same winter of 1999 that brought the expedition also saw an unprecedented cold snap, with temperatures dropping 5 degrees below the regional average and an unexplained aurora that lingered over the Altai for 3 consecutive nights. The phenomenon did not stop at weather. Within weeks of the discovery, several members of the team reported strange occurrences. Compasses spun wildly, campfires sputtered without wind, and a low, resonant hum seemed to emanate from the cliff itself, an acoustic phenomenon that some scientists now believe could be a natural resonance of the stone when struck by wind at certain angles. One researcher, Dr. Mikhail Sokolov, claimed the hum matched the frequency of the Earth's Schumann resonances, a subtle electromagnetic pulse that circulates the planet. While the scientific community remains skeptical, the correlation between the timing of the carving's exposure and these anomalies has fueled speculation that the Black Sun may have functioned as a kind of ancient alarm system, a geological trigger activated when the Earth's magnetic field shifted. Adding another layer of intrigue, a nearby burial mound yielded a bronze amulet bearing the same 12-spoked disc. But this one was inscribed with a series of runic characters that have yet to be deciphered. Linguists compare the script to the early Turkic Orkhon alphabet, yet the sequence does not match any known words, leaving the possibility that it could be a code, a prayer, or perhaps a warning etched for future generations. To this day, the Altai cliffs keep their secrets. Modern satellite imagery shows no other sites with a comparable concentration of Black Sun imagery, and the remote location means that few eyes have ever examined the stone up close. The lingering question remains: was the Black Sun a purely artistic expression, a ritualistic emblem, or a deliberately crafted omen, waiting for the world to rediscover it and feel the chill of the ancient curse once more? The answer, like the echoing hum in the wind-swept canyon, fades into the night, leaving us to wonder what unseen forces still linger beneath the snow-capped peaks. What if the strange stones of Beigujing, the whispering dunes of the Sahara, the endless rings of the Devil's Kettle, and the indecipherable symbols etched into the walls of the Temple of the Moon all share a single, forgotten thread of knowledge? Imagine a civilization so old that even the oldest myths are mere shadows of its true story, a people who mapped the world not with paper or parchment, but with patterns etched into rock, sand, and ice. Their language was not spoken. It was encoded in geometry, in the way a stone aligns with the solstice sun, in the way a river bends to form a perfect spiral, in the way a cluster of basalt columns mirrors the constellations above. When we walk among the massive stone heads of the Saqqara necropolis, we feel a subtle resonance, as if the stone itself remembers a song long silenced. The same resonance can be sensed in the humming of the Rosslyn Chapel's hidden acoustics, and even in the low, mournful moan that drifts from the depths of the Lizard Island sinkhole, a place where no animal should survive. Scholars have long dismissed these coincidences as chance, yet each site contains a recurring motif. A three-pointed star intersected by a double spiral, a shape that appears on a Bronze Age jade disc from the Yangtze Basin, on a carved obsidian blade found near the Andes, and on the copper plates of the Picts-St. Ninian's cross. Some researchers propose that these symbols are fragments of a lost, geomantic alphabet, a system that allowed its creators to read the Earth itself, predicting floods, volcanic eruptions, and even the migration of peoples. If that is true, the mysterious disappearance of the Indus Valley's Great Bath could have been a deliberate burial of this knowledge, sealed beneath layers of silt to protect it from a world that would misuse it. The same could explain why the Nazca lines, visible only from the sky, were never altered after the arrival of the Inca. Perhaps they served as a planetary map, guiding an ancient fleet of star watchers across continents. The question that haunts us, then, is not whether each anomaly is a puzzle, but whether the puzzle pieces were placed by a single hand, a hand that vanished millennia ago, taking with it the key to reading the planet's hidden script. In the quiet darkness of a night, when the aurora brushes the horizon, you can almost hear a faint echo of that forgotten tongue, urging us to look beyond the surface, to see the world not as a collection of isolated mysteries, but as a vast, interwoven tapestry waiting for the mind that once understood its design to return. The answer remains hidden, but the whisper grows louder with every stone we turn, every code we decode, and every silence we dare to break.